All right, let's get down to it. Welcome back, everyone, to another Gridiron Expert live stream, baby. Right here on YouTube, 7 o'clock Central Time. You know the drill. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, unless we tell you otherwise. And we are here on a wacky Wednesday, bringing out the Hawaiian shirt tonight. How about that? Having a little fun with it. We last week did the banana shirt, which seems to get the most positive response, but today we bring out Hawaiian, and who knows what we'll bring out next week. Could be banana, could be Hawaiian, could be something else. You never know. We like to switch it up, keep you on your toes a little bit. Can't give you what everybody, can't give you what you want every time, We got to keep it fresh. But so good to see you guys. I want to give a shout out real quick to Husker D, who just showed up. What's going on, Husker D? Good to see you. Robert Sharpton, Eddie Rose, Mike Myrick. Good to see you, my guy. Stephen Cuffey as well. All of you. Very happy to have you on our live stream tonight, which, again, is Wacky Wednesday, where we will be breaking down a lot of things tonight. Chat only, no calls. We wanted to make sure we kind of focus on the chat and the topics that we have. A little bit shorter tonight, nothing too crazy, though. Just a little bit shorter of a live stream. We want to make sure we get to the questions and comments in the chat. Want to get to our topics. But it's Wacky Wednesday, which means we're doing upset alert, baby. Sound the alarm. If I had a bullhorn or an air horn, I'd be blowing it right now. Because it's going to get interesting. It's going to get interesting. We have three games that we want to talk about, and we will get to those very, very soon. But the alert, the siren, it's going, baby, on upset alert on this wacky Wednesday. I hope you guys are all doing good, having a great night so far. Enjoying your hump day, enjoying Wednesday. Get ready for this college football week, which has already started. The beauty of that, right, is it started yesterday with midweek action. We got midweek action tonight. I got playing over on the TV over here, off to my left, so I can kind of keep an eye on it as I talk to you guys. Also got some NBA action going on the phone. I got a little bit of a parlay going tonight on some NBA action. And so if you are there we go, baby. If you are a 76ers fan, if anybody's out there, root hard. I need the 76ers to come through tonight against the Wizards. So come on, Philadelphia. Just like I'm rooting for Philadelphia in the World Series. So Robert saying he was rooting for the Astros. Can't pull myself to do it. I know, Robert, you're doing it because you're a Braves fan and the Phillies put your guys out. That is understandable and very fair and justifiable. I just can't get behind the Astros, man. I just can't. I was really happy. I'm not a Phillies fan either. I'm not a Phillies guy. I'm not an Astros guy. But if I had to pick the lesser of two evils, I'm rooting for the Phillies just in this scenario here. Robert says go Hawks. I think I chose the Knicks tonight. So, but Robert, I admire your enthusiasm and I admire your dedication and loyalty to the Atlanta sports, whether it's Georgia, the Hawks, the Braves, the Falcons. I'm sure I admire that. And Eddie says go Thunder, sticking in that region up here in Oklahoma and Missouri and things like that. But again, good to see all of you guys here. Husker says go Cavs. All right, so we're getting some NBA teams in there. Like seeing, so we got Thunder, Hawks, Cavs. For me personally, I am a Heat fan. I'm a Miami Heat fan, number one, and the Grizzlies is number two for me. Grizzlies are right behind or right next to where I am. I'm in Arkansas, so. With and you can see the helmet back there. As Tennessee is not that far of a drive for me to get over to Memphis, so I go over to catch John Morant some action every now and then. I think a couple years ago, got to see him play Kyrie and the Nets. That was a fun one. Got to see him play the Lakers and LeBron a while back, which was a fun one. So yeah, it's kind of nice having that. So the Heat number one for me, Grizzlies number two, very very close though. And with that, we'll wrap up the basketball talk for now. I love getting to hear people's different perspectives and different teams though on everything as we kind of slowly but surely have people trickling into this live stream again on this wacky Wednesday. It's the beautiful thing, guys. We are excited to do this, and we've got a lot to talk about in a very relatively short amount of time. So let's just go ahead and get into it. Before I do, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? Who do you think we have on upset alert? We'll see how many of you guys can predict this correctly. Remember what we classify as an upset. We have two games tonight that are double-digit underdogs that we think could actually win the game outright. Double-digit underdog that could win the game outright. We have two of those. And then we have one other game that is a top 25 team that is on upset alert, but the spread is not double digits, not 10 up, right? So that's kind of what we're breaking down. And we'll repeat that over and over and over again to make sure everybody knows what's going on, but we are going to make sure that you guys know that. So Eugene Murphy, good to see you. Always looking forward to the streams. Always look forward to having you on the stream, my guy. Really, really happy to have you, Eugene. And Mike Myrick, he says, go Heat. Let's go. I love it. I love it. I should have known you might have been a Heat fan down in Florida. Depending on where you're located. But nice to know we've got another Heat fan in the house. Doggy says Clemson Notre Dame is one of them. Slangin' and Bangin' says Clemson's one of them. Robert says LSU. All right. All very good predictions. Let's get on with it, guys. Who is on upset alert? Who is on upset alert this Saturday? And our first team that is a double-digit favorite, but very well could lose the game, is Penn State. Ooh, how about that? How about Penn State and Indiana? Now, a lot of you guys are going to be quick to say, that is ridiculous. GE, you've lost your mind. What are you thinking? Indiana's no good. And you're right, they're not that great of a team. But here's the logic here. Penn State's only about a 2-touchdown favorite, roughly 14 points, depending on where you're shopping. Penn State traditionally struggles the week after Indiana. Traditionally struggles the week after Ohio State, excuse me. So, Penn State, big-time letdown game coming up against Indiana. Lost to Ohio State. They're emotional. They're upset. And we've seen that in the past, right? Penn State almost beats Ohio State, or they get blown out by Ohio State. And then what happens? They lose to a crap team like Michigan State. They lose to Illinois, which last year, that was before the Ohio State game, but still. They always have that one game under James Franklin that they tend to lose that maybe they shouldn't. A couple of years ago, it actually was Indiana. That COVID year, season opener, they fell to the Hoosiers. Indiana's coming off a bye week. The defense isn't all that horrible. They're going to have home field advantage. The offense is significantly, I'd say, better than they were last year. Major offensive struggles last year. Is not that far-fetched to think that Penn State could fall to Indiana, or dare I say that Indiana could upset the Nittany Lions. Penn State's out of contention for anything. They're not going to win the Big Ten East. They've lost to Michigan and Ohio State. They're not going to the playoff. If they won out, maybe they could make a New Year's Six bowl game. That's not that entirely far-fetched. But I do believe that Penn State could be on slight upset alert this Saturday. I know it's going to be a shock for some. Many will probably disagree. But do not rule out a Hoosiers upset. I know we're not talking basketball here, but watch out for that game. And again, a lot of the reasoning for that is how Penn State traditionally fares under James Franklin. If you're a Penn State fan, you know that. You know how bad they've played the week after Ohio State, especially in games where they lose. And last week, I think a lot of Penn State fans, a lot of Penn State players are going to be kicking themselves, knowing they probably should have beat Ohio State. They didn't have that game won by any means. They were up by 4 with 9 minutes left. But to lose the game by, 13 points after leading by 4 or 5 in the fourth quarter and allow Ohio State to go on a 28-3 run in the span of 6 minutes, it's embarrassing. And that's frustrating and a bad look. And you can't help but wonder how the morale of that Penn State team is, and are they going to be able to bounce back from that? So that's upset number one. Upset number one. We have one more where there's a double-digit underdog that very well could win the game outright. Go Pelty says Maryland over Wisconsin. That is a single-digit spread. That could be our third one. You never know. Could be number 3. Maryland over Wisconsin, some say. Someone said Clemson over Notre Dame, or Notre Dame and Clemson. Someone said Washington, Oregon State. Although Washington wouldn't be an upset. That wouldn't be an upset because Washington's actually favored in that game over Oregon State. But number 2 on our upset alert tonight is, you guessed it, I believe it was Robert did, Alabama and LSU. How about that? Good pick, Robert. Good pick. You look at this game, guys, I will say this. I don't really think Death Valley plays that big of a role in this game. And some are going to say, that's ridiculous, G. What are you saying? You're saying LSU doesn't have home field advantage? No, I believe they do to the average opponent. To the average normal opponent, I believe that they do. However, it should be noted that since Nick Saban's taken over at Alabama, I believe they've lost in Baton Rouge, was it 4 times? No, to LSU, I think, period, 4 times. Alabama does not lose to LSU. It doesn't happen often. I should say. Now, they struggled last year. They only beat the Tigers by 6 last year in Tuscaloosa, so a near scare there. They did lose a few years ago with Joe Burrow. They lost a few in the early 2010s. They lost the game of the century, Alabama did, in 2011 in Tuscaloosa, 9-6, but Bama got the revenge in the national championship game that year. They lost to LSU the year before in 2010. So there has been instances where LSU has found a way to pull off an upset. But after 2011 and after that national championship loss, LSU struggled against the Crimson Tide. They really, really did. Now, why are we saying we're bashing LSU here? Why do we think that LSU could win the game outright? Well, again, there's an issue here for Alabama. Both teams coming off a bye week. Both teams clearly right now fighting for their college football playoff lives, because we talked about this yesterday in our live stream, that LSU as a 2-loss team easily, and we do say easily, could make the college football playoff. Our man Sam over at All CFB came on and said the same thing, that in 2017, Auburn was a 2-loss team. Auburn was a 2-loss team, but was sitting at number 2 heading into the SEC championship game. Had they won the SEC championship, Auburn would have been a 2-loss team in the college football playoff. LSU, if they are to win out, which would include a win over Alabama, which would include a win over Arkansas, would include a win against A&M, and then a SEC title over Georgia or Tennessee, how can you leave the Tigers out? You just can't. LSU offensively has taken off significantly. Jaden Daniels is playing some great ball, and the defense, I believe, is severely underrated for the Tigers and has been for a while now. From the majority of this season, their one really bad game was against Tennessee in Baton Rouge, and to be honest with you, who has been able to stop Tennessee? No one has. Maybe Georgia can this Saturday, but Alabama couldn't do it. Florida couldn't do it. Pittsburgh couldn't do it. Kentucky sure as heck couldn't do it. So a lot of potential there for LSU defensively to shut down Bryce Young and Alabama, another team that, again, does not really have a number 1 true wide receiver. And we're going to break down this game a little bit more tomorrow, guys. We're not sitting here telling you that the LSU is going to upset Alabama, but we're also not telling you right now that Alabama is going to beat LSU. Tomorrow at 1 o'clock Central Time, right here on the channel, we will predict the Alabama-LSU game. We'll have our full video and analysis on that game. But LSU at night in Death Valley, which again doesn't play too big of a role against a Nick Saban-led team, but can play a bit of a factor. It's always good to have the home field and the home crowd on your side. At home, at night, top 10 showdown, SEC West possibly on the line. The stakes are high. Brian Kelly, despite what people will say, is a pretty good motivator. I will give him that. This is an opportunity for him to win the big game. Something that he was traditionally unable to do at Notre Dame. This is an opportunity for him to win a huge first game in year 1 at LSU in the SEC and finally beat Nick Saban. Something that Kelly was unable to do at Notre Dame either, losing in that 2012 national championship, losing in the playoff a few years ago. Very, very big opportunity. LSU, yes, has the possibility to do that. And yes, as a matter of fact, Alabama, despite already having a loss this year, is on upset alert this Saturday. Alabama is on upset alert this Saturday in Death Valley. A huge, huge day for the SEC. Alabama, LSU at night. And before that, Georgia and Tennessee in Athens. Our prediction for that already out today. Make sure to take a look at it. And also make sure to like this live stream, guys. Make sure to go over to YouTube. You're on YouTube now. Scroll down. Just hit that like button. Don't even have to leave the stream. Just hit the like button for us. Help us out. It boosts our analytics big time. And goes a long way in boosting our channel. So make sure to hit that like button for everybody here. All right, our final potential upset of the night. This one is not a double-digit underdog. Remember, we always do one that is a single digit, and it is, I believe someone called it earlier, Doggy was right. It's Clemson and Notre Dame. How about the Fighting Irish, Brian Kelly's former team? How about that? So Brian Kelly leaves Notre Dame. Notre Dame not nearly as good as we thought they were going to be. Started off as a top 5 team. Right now sitting at 5-3. So not playing the best ball in the world by any means. But I have a really good feeling about this game. I feel good about this game. And I don't know why. But it just feels like a major, major trap game. Clemson jumps into the top 4 last night. Surprising for many to see Clemson get the number 4 spot over Michigan. They now head to a night game in South Bend where they lost just a few years ago. If you recall that, a couple of years ago, that COVID year was one of the best games of the year. It was double, triple overtime thriller. DJ Uiagalelei kind of had his coming out game against Notre Dame. Notre Dame won that game, made the college football playoff that year. But man, we are going to be considered lucky if we get another game like that. But someone asked me the other day, they go, how can you pick Notre Dame to beat Clemson? What makes you believe that? And I will say, well, this. Notre Dame's defense is pretty dang good. Whether you want to believe it or not, Notre Dame's defense is pretty dang good. And they have the opportunity and the possibility to shut down DJ Uiagalelei, who has been wildly inconsistent, as we have discussed. And, DJ just hasn't been playing good ball as of late. He got benched in that win over Syracuse, so a game that Clemson probably shouldn't have won. So you look at that game number one and say, hey, Notre Dame defensively, I think matches up very well with Clemson offensively. I really do. Someone said, how do you expect Notre Dame to score points? Their offense has been wildly inconsistent. You're right, they have been inconsistent in that area. But I want to say this. Notre Dame offensively has shown plenty of flashes of brilliance. North Carolina, one of the best offenses in the country. Notre Dame went on the road, won that game by 13 points. It was 45-32. So the Notre Dame put up 45 points on North Carolina. Yeah, the Tar Heels defense isn't great, but still scored 45 points, and on the road won by 13. Last week, they scored 41. Someone was like, yeah, one of those was a defensive touchdown. Who cares? All right, fine. Still 34 points from an offense that, yes, has been kind of pedestrian for this year and inconsistent this year, but still, a win's a win. Had a pretty good offensive showing against BYU, a BYU team that hasn't been great lately. Obviously, got blown out by Arkansas, got blown out by Liberty, but still a pretty solid offensive showing. Notre Dame has the offense to hang in this game. I genuinely believe that. I believe they match up relatively well with Clemson in all aspects here. And the game, again, being in South Bend, that home crowd is going to play a major factor. This arguably will be the toughest environment that Clemson has faced so far this year. We know they had that tough road game against Wake Forest, one they nearly lost, but I think South Bend's going to be a lot tougher than that. I genuinely do. And this just feels like the ultimate trap game where no one is paying as much attention to this game because it's not the top 10 showdown we were hoping for or thought it would be coming into the season. But yet Notre Dame is still going to find a way to pull off this victory and ruin Clemson's college football playoff hopes. And again, they will be ruined. They will be ruined if they fall to Notre Dame. So that concludes, guys, our upset alert here at the Gridiron Expert. How about that? I love Wacky Wednesdays, baby. I really, really do. I love getting to break down potential upsets. I love getting to hear your guys, thoughts on that. I love getting your takes on it, and just kind of getting to discuss, whether you agree or disagree. Just like maybe you agreed or disagreed with these college football playoff rankings from last night. Again, we had a long live stream about that yesterday, kind of breaking down the rankings. If you weren't here last night, leave your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. What you thought about Tennessee and being number one. What you thought about Ohio State getting all the way up to number 2. Do you believe Clemson should have been 4th? Do you believe Michigan should have been it? Do you think Alabama was okay at 6th? Do you think TCU should have been above them? What do you think about LSU at 10th? That's a very shocking ranking for the Tigers. Ole Miss at 11th, a little bit overrated in my opinion. So many things that we strongly disagreed with from the playoff committee last night. So many things that we big time disagreed with from the playoff committee last night. But again, it is the first set of rankings. First set of rankings hopefully will start to shake themselves out. And again, the beauty of this that I really am looking at here more than anything is the fact that, look at this. Tennessee has to play Georgia. That's a huge one. Ohio State still has to play Michigan. Clemson could easily lose to Notre Dame this Saturday. That's going to cause some shakeups. Oregon, USC, UCLA, the Pac-12 race is so intriguing to me because Oregon still has to play Utah. That's a tough game. UCLA and USC still have to play each other. That's an interesting game. So there's a lot at stake over these next. We still have a month of football left to play. I think people are forgetting that. We still have a month left of ball, and these rankings are slowly but surely going to shake out, fix themselves up. It's going to be a lot of fun. The race down the stretch is going to be a lot of fun. And what we're going to do here in a second is we're actually going to break down what a 12-team college football playoff would like based on those rankings. So we'll come back to that here in a few seconds. I'm going to take a couple questions out of the chat here in a second. But we're going to break down, because remember, the playoff will be expanding here in a few years. And so we kind of want to show you that if a playoff were to begin tomorrow, based on what the committee just put out, what would the matchups be? And we kind of threw in some loose predictions. Didn't really put much thought into it, so don't take it too seriously. But what it would possibly be and what it would do for just college football as a whole. Be a lot of fun to look at. John Sarian, good to see you. Again, slanging and banging. Good to see you as an Ohio State fan. I like it. John says Notre Dame only has a chance because they have a legit defense. Their offense is barely mediocre. Isn't that all they need? Isn't that all I need? Just a chance? Right? All I need is a chance. And again, like I said, the defense is good enough to hang in there and shut down that Clemson offense that's, yes, is, in my opinion, better than Notre Dame's. For sure, it is better than Notre Dame's. But it's not one of the best in the country. It's not that great. And if DJ comes out there and has a poor game, you're going to throw in a freshman quarterback in a night game in South Bend. Let's see how he does then. And keep in mind, Klubnik allowed the offense to settle down in that game against Syracuse. He didn't really do anything as a quarterback. Had a couple good run plays in there. Was able to draw that 15-yard penalty to keep the drive alive, which helped them win the game. But I think he only had a couple of completions for like 30 yards over the course. They didn't really let him sling it against Syracuse. So if DJ comes out and plays really poorly early on, and Dabo's like, we got to make a change if we want to have a chance to win this game, and you throw Klubnik in there, you're throwing in a freshman quarterback in a very hostile environment, and he's going to have to actually throw the ball to win. Is he capable of it? Yes, 100%. But that's a tough thing to ask of a young QB, especially with your potential playoff hopes on the line. That's all they need, just a chance. Slanging and Banging says Tennessee 1, Georgia 2, Ohio State 3, Michigan 4, Clemson 5, Alabama 6. That is acceptable. I'm actually okay with that. I'm okay with that set of rankings. Our rankings look very similar to that. I think we actually flipped Georgia at 1, Tennessee at 2. We actually had Alabama at 7. Oregon, we had it at number 6. But I'm okay with those rankings, to be honest with you. I was not upset with Tennessee being number 1. A lot of people were. I viewed it as a toss-up. I would have been upset if Ohio State had been number 1. Ohio State, to me, did not deserve number 1. I think they're number 3. But Georgia, Tennessee was a toss-up. And again, that's going to be resolved this Saturday. That's one of those things where, like, all right, you want to be upset about it for a few days? We actually will get to settle that on the field. If Tennessee wins, they remain number 1. If Georgia wins, they retake number 1. So it's not that big of an issue now in the first set of rankings. Jerry Turner, good to see you, man. Happy to have you here. Super happy to have you here. I'm doing extremely well. Hope you're doing well. Again, we appreciate you and all your support, Jerry, and everything you've been doing for us. So nice to see you, man. What are the chances that both Ohio State and Michigan make the playoff? From Doggy. Pretty slim. Pretty slim. Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny how that works? That the SEC is going to give more preference when it comes to that. Look, you're not gonna end up having 2 SEC teams and 2 Big Ten teams, and that's going to be your playoff. Because bottom line, whether you know it or not, the SEC has already clinched 2 playoff spots. Whether you know it or not, they already have. And here's how. Barring some crazy upsets down the road, like Alabama loses to LSU or loses to Ole Miss or whatever, here's what's going to happen. Let me throw out a couple scenarios for you. Georgia beats Tennessee this Saturday. They win out. Alabama wins out. Georgia and Alabama meet in the SEC championship. Boom, they're both in the playoff if Alabama wins. If Alabama loses, oh no, Bama's out, Tennessee's in. I don't see any way that they could leave Tennessee out if Alabama loses. Now, if Alabama wins, Georgia and Bama are in. There's 2 SEC teams. Well, then you've got to account for the Big Ten champion, which is going to be Ohio State or Michigan. There's 3. And then that's where the controversy comes in. Do you put in a potential one-loss Pac-12 champion, whether that's Oregon, USC, or UCLA? Do you put in a one-loss Tennessee that didn't play for their conference championship? What about Clemson? What if they finish undefeated? What about TCU? What if they finish undefeated? There are a lot of candidates there, and it would be very hard for the committee to say, as good as Tennessee is, it'd be very hard to take a Tennessee team that didn't even play for their conference championship and put them in. Same for Georgia, though. Say Tennessee beats Georgia. Tennessee wins out and plays in Alabama. And someone goes, what if Alabama loses? What if Alabama loses to Ole Miss or LSU or whatever? Okay, Bama's out. One more loss for Bama and they're done. Don't worry about it. Well, now both SEC East teams are getting in. I don't see how they can't, unless whoever comes from the West wins. Let's say again, Georgia plays, say it's Georgia and LSU. Let's say Alabama loses this Saturday, LSU wins out. And it's Georgia and LSU in the SEC championship. All right, well, let's say Georgia beats LSU in that championship game. Let's say they do that. Well, then Georgia's in. And I think it's going to be really hard to leave Tennessee out unless something else crazy happens from everybody else. Same thing with LSU, though. If LSU is a 2-loss team and wins out and beats Georgia, LSU's in, Georgia's in because they're undefeated. So SEC to me is almost a lock to get 2 teams in, which means there's no way that the Big Ten gets 2 teams in because they would need absolute chaos for that to happen. Ohio State and Michigan right now are both deserving of a Final Four spot, no doubt about it. But you have to account for Clemson that could be undefeated and would win the conference championship, which the committee claims to, say is a very big deal. So you have to watch out for Clemson. You have to watch out for TCU. If TCU runs the table, there's no reason they should be out of the top 4. They should be in the top 4 if they win out and are undefeated as a Big 12 champion. Especially considering they got Texas, maybe a rematch against Kansas State, who could be top 10 at the time. So watch out for that game. So Clemson's at play, TCU's at play. The Pac-12 is certainly at play. If Oregon or USC finishes as a 1-loss conference champion, they'd each be able to get 1 or 2 more quality victories on their resume. It'd be hard to leave them out. I just don't see any way that the Big Ten gets 2 teams in, but the SEC seems like a lock at this point, barring any crazy upsets down the road. So great question there. We're actually going to take a look at that expanded playoff here in a second. Eddie Rose, do we think we'll see Sam Horn when Tennessee kills Missouri, even though Missouri has a very good defense? Probably. I could see Drinkwitz getting him some reps early or late in that game when the game is obviously far out of reach. Let's see here. John says Bama should be ahead of TCU, or Bama ahead of TCU is not reasonable, and for a 2-loss LSU to be ahead of 4 1-loss Power 5 teams, some motivation from the college football game. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, go back to those rankings again. LSU is a 2-loss team. They're ahead of Ole Miss, which is okay because Ole Miss only has 1 loss, but it was by 25 points to LSU. UCLA has 1 loss. North Carolina has 1 loss. Illinois has 1 loss. Kansas State has 2. Utah 2. Penn State 2. But, again, looking at that, UCLA obviously only has 1, as we mentioned. But you look at this, guys. I again just can't. The reason that Illinois and North Carolina are so low is their strength of schedule hasn't been any good. Neither Illinois nor North Carolina have beaten anybody with substance of somebody worth noting. No really big quality wins on the schedule for Illinois or North Carolina for that matter. They're taking care of business the way they should, and they're going to have their opportunities. Illinois has a road game at Michigan. North Carolina's got Wake Forest coming up. The potential big ACC championship against Clemson. They've got their opportunities coming, but nothing crazy big at this point. So that's why Illinois and North Carolina are significantly low. But LSU being 10th is ridiculous. Ole Miss being at 11th is ridiculous. Neither of those 2 teams deserve to be that high up there, and I think they're both going to get exposed, in my opinion. I think they will both get exposed on these next few weeks when they play Alabama. Personally, I believe that's what's going to happen. So yeah, that'll answer any questions and issues that you might have with the rankings. Bama's going to end that real quick, but they're going to get resume boosting victories in the process thanks to the committee's incompetence. Slinging and Banging says, as a Buckeye, I guess I want Georgia to win and win big so Hendon Hooker doesn't win the Heisman. He'll probably still win the Heisman, again, unless he just goes into a big slump. If I'm you, as an Ohio State fan, I'm doing that so I don't have to play Hendon Hooker. If I'm anybody, Tennessee is good. I don't want to face that offense. So if I'm Ohio State or anybody else, I'm hoping that Georgia wins so that maybe Tennessee misses out on the playoff, and I don't even have to risk playing Tennessee, whether that's in a semifinal game or a playoff or the national championship. I don't want to play them. So that's what I'd be doing if I was Ohio State. JJ, as a huge Kansas State fan, do you think that there's any chance we can make the college football playoff? I do, actually. I really do. Because here's the thing. If LSU is a top 10 team with 2 losses and everybody's talking about how they could get in if they win out, there's no reason that we can't be talking the same thing with Kansas State. I'm going to pull up their schedule right now, JJ. I'm going to tell you why. They have a game coming up against Texas, who's ranked. Many people disagree with that. That's going to help out Kansas State, though, if they win it. If Kansas State beats Texas, that's another ranked win on their resume to go along with Oklahoma State and Oklahoma, who they had earlier. Oklahoma no longer ranked, but they were at the time. So it's another ranked win. A road game at Baylor. Not easy. Not an easy place to play. A Baylor team that could be low-end top 25, depending on what the committee decides to do. Probably not, but still would be a quality win over a Baylor team that would have 5 or 6 wins heading into next week. A road game at West Virginia, nothing to brag about there. A Kansas win that could be 6-7 win team, maybe still at 5. Who knows? Kansas has a rough stretch. I really hope they go bowling though. Texas is the big one though. If they beat Texas and Baylor, that's 2 quality wins. You know, JJ, that Kansas State's going to have people lose ahead of them. You know that USC or UCLA is guaranteed to lose. They got to play each other. You know that Tennessee or Georgia is going to lose. You know that Michigan or Ohio State is going to lose. You know that Alabama or LSU is going to lose, along with Alabama or Ole Miss is going to lose. So a lot of teams ahead of Kansas State are going to lose. And you know, and so you look at that, and if they keep racking up victories, and TCU is undefeated still, and you have a top 10 showdown, you know, a number 4 or 5 TCU versus a number 8 Kansas State in the Big 12 championship, and Kansas State wins that, I genuinely believe the Wildcats would have a voice and a shot. And I'm trying to think of the word I'm looking for here, but should be under consideration to make the Final Four. Again, having not lost a game since TCU, that'd be mid-October, and that TCU game is one where they led 28-10, and again, we're riddled by injuries not just at the quarterback position, but at the on defense as well. So something that people need to keep in mind. The problem is the committee does not watch the games, and they don't take those things into consideration. The committee looks on their phone, they go, ooh, TCU beat Kansas State by 10. I bet that game wasn't very close. Moving on. Well, no. Wrong. If you watch the game, you know that Kansas State was winning that game 28-10 at one point. They got hit by tons of... That's like playing a game and going, ooh, this team lost by 14. That's not good. Oh, well, did you know that their starting quarterback got injured on the second play of the game, and that they played the rest of the game with the backup quarterback and were actually winning at halftime before they ultimately crumbled? And the committee goes, oh, no, we didn't know that. Really? We didn't know that they played, 14 points with a backup quarterback. That's not horrible. That's not horrible. Oh, yeah, really? Oh, now it changes, doesn't it? So, again, the committee doesn't look at the facts of the game. They just look at the score and the box score. They don't look at, was the team hurt? What was the weather like? There's so many factors that go into how a team could play. And it's not necessarily an excuse. We're not looking to find excuses here, but something should be said about that, and it never is. So, yeah, JJ, I think you do have a chance. If UNC wins out, are they in? Possibly. Less likely, but, again, UNC's got opportunities as well down the stretch. They've got, where are they? They got a game against Wake Forest coming up on the road. They got a game against NC State. So if you're North Carolina, you're actually rooting for your in-state opponents. You're rooting for Wake Forest. You're rooting for NC State to win their games so that they can remain in the top 25 and boost their resume. And then if they beat Clemson in the ACC championship, they would have a shot because, again, their only loss would be to Notre Dame earlier in the year, which isn't, if Notre Dame can finish with 7 or 8 wins, which I know that would require Notre Dame to win out. But, yeah, it's possible. Probably 7-ish wins is more likely, 7 or 8, but still, it could happen. It would help UNC, but I actually lean more towards Kansas State getting in if they win out more so than UNC, which is shocking considering UNC would only have 1 loss and Kansas State would have 2. Something to consider there. Let's see. I'm with you, John. I'm with you. LSU lost a game to a team that isn't ranked and hasn't been so far. That itself should at least be a boost like a team for UCLA. I agree. Look, we have UCLA ranked. We have UCLA ranked 10th. We have UCLA ranked 10th. We have LSU ranked all the way down to 14th. I have Ole Miss down at 15th. So I'm with you. I believe UCLA should be. I think LSU is ranked way too high. I think Ole Miss is ranked way too high. Again, I think more than anything, it is a way for the committee to boost Alabama's resume and to spark some controversy and to make this game this Saturday look a lot better. To make LSU and Alabama look more exciting and more attractive to the eye because it's a top 10 matchup. They know it shouldn't be, but it's all about ratings and it's all about money, and we know that, unfortunately. All right, let's move on to something else real quick. We've been talking about the playoff and who's your dark horse and who can this team get in? This isn't going to be too much of a conversation here in a few years when the playoff is expanded. That's one good plus from this, right? When the playoff is finally expanded, you're still going to have controversy because you're going to have a lot of at-larges. But what would it look like today? People talking about, can this team get in? Can this team get in? Can Ohio State and Michigan both get in? What about the SEC? What's going to happen to them? Rest assured. Let's take a look at what it would look like right now. If a 12-team playoff were implemented this year, and it were to start tomorrow, based on yesterday's college football playoff rankings, this is what a 12-team playoff would look like. This is what it would look like, and we are going to break it all down for you right now. So remember, guys, the way this is structured, the top 4 highly ranked conference champions get those bye weeks. So based on the rankings we have seen from the committee, Tennessee is number 1. We would assume, just for the sake of this argument, that Tennessee is the SEC champion. Ohio State was number 2. They are the Big Ten champion, so they get the 2 seed. Now you notice that Clemson is number 3. They're number 4, so we skip Georgia. Yes, we skip Georgia because they are not the SEC champion, so they would not get a top 4 seed, which means they would not get a bye. So it goes to the next highest ranked conference champion, which in this case we assume would be Clemson. They're the 3rd seed. And then TCU, who was ranked, 7th? TCU was ranked 7th in the rankings. They are the 4th seed, and they get a first-round bye because they are, Alabama's ranked above them. That's fine. That's fine. Alabama still wasn't the highest-ranked SEC team, would not be the SEC champion based on these rankings. TCU gets it because the Pac-12 had the lowest-ranked team in terms of the Power 5 conferences. Oregon would be next. Now, you notice how Oregon is the 8th seed. Just because Oregon is the next highest, the next Power 5 conference doesn't mean that they get the 5 seed. Then you move on to at-larges. So Georgia, now we go back up to number 3, they get the 5 seed. Then you start moving down the list. And some of these teams do retain their rankings. Georgia's 5, Michigan's 6, although Michigan was 5th. And then it kind of, mellows out. Alabama 7, just like in the poll, or 6, just like or close to the poll. LSU's 10th, just like in the poll. Oregon 8, USC 9, and then Tulane 12, Ole Miss 11. So those are the teams that would get in. Now, I don't know about you guys, but this looks fun. This looks fun. John says that it's a bad idea because the bye is not really fair. I do think it's fair. I think it's 100% fair. Tulane, Tulane is in because the 12-team playoff is going to give the highest-ranked Group of 5 champion a playoff spot. And more times than not, they will probably be the 12th seed, unless it's a matter of Cincinnati last year, where they actually would have been a higher seed. But, right now, the highest-ranked Group of 5 champion gets to go to a New Year's Six bowl game. With this format, the highest-ranked Group of 5 champion would go to the college football playoff and would get a seed. Could be 12, more than likely, like Tulane, especially if they're ranked, low. But like Cincinnati last year, they had some good wins and were actually a top 4 team. So, believe it or not, Cincinnati would have gotten a bye. The top 4 for the first-round bye isn't only for Power 5 teams. It's the top 4 conference champions. Top 4 highest-ranked conference champions. So, if Cincinnati or any team from a Group of 5 conference was 3rd in the country, based on the final rankings, they would get a bye week. Which means there would be 2. There would be 2 Power 5 conference champions that would not get a first-round bye. That's just kind of how it works. So Tulane would be in. And just look at these matchups, guys. I mean, some people will complain, we have to watch Oregon, USC. We already saw that maybe in a Pac-12 championship. Again, this is just based on this week. By the season's end, things would kind of shift a little bit. Things would change. But Alabama, LSU, another SEC matchup. Great. Oregon, USC, great. In-conference matchup. Why do we care about that? We don't want that. Who wouldn't want that? And then you look at the Final Four and someone goes, great. Tennessee, Georgia, SEC matchup. Great. Ohio State, Michigan. Great. Mississippi State preview. This is based on the College Football Playoff Committee's rankings. These are not our rankings. These are not our rankings. And the teams that we have progressed through the bracket, having Tennessee, we're not really predicting that. We just clicked random teams, or we just clicked a handful of teams just to show what it would look like. We didn't put any thought into these predictions, so don't say, I can't believe you have Tennessee beating Georgia, or I can't believe you have Michigan, whatever. We're not putting thought into it. We're just kind of showing you what it could possibly look like. And I'm looking at this, and I'm excited about it if it were to happen, right? I mean, the point that I'm trying to make to a lot of people that are against a 12-team playoff is this. Because there are a lot of people out there that say, a 12-team playoff, all that's going to create is just more games. Their quote was meaningless games, and the Final Four is always going to remain the same. Is it though? Look at the Final Four there. 1 plays 5, 2 plays 6. If it was going to stay the same, it'd be 1 plays 4, 2 plays 3. And I guarantee you that as soon as they implement a 12-team college football playoff, you will rarely see the top 4 teams in the Final Four. It's just like the NCAA tournament with basketball. How often do we see all number 1 seeds make the Final Four? Very rarely does that happen. Only a couple times, maybe only once or twice in history have we seen all the number 1 seeds play in the Final Four. It doesn't happen. It just happened recently for the first time. You're not going to see that in college football. You're just not going to see it. And that's great. You want parity. And then you're going to have your homers. You're going to be like, oh, why does Alabama have to play Ohio State in the quarterfinals, in the Elite Eight, if you will? Why do they have to play that? That's a national championship caliber game there. Well, that's unfortunate. Hope you win and move on to the semifinal. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's one of these things, guys, where, again, people are going to get upset but you know what that tells me is you're scared. Why does Alabama have to play? Why do we have to play Alabama in the quarterfinals? Well, that's just the way the playoff is structured. Well, this is stupid. All right, well, if you think you're that good, Ohio State, or if you think you're that good, Alabama, then you shouldn't be too worried about it. Go beat them. Go win. Move on to the semifinals. Go win. And you're going to have people complain about it all the time because they're going to be upset because they had to face quote, eliter opponent in the quarterfinals or whatever, and then they'll lose. And they'll be like, well, if we had a 14 playoff, this never would have happened. Well, let me tell you one thing. If you had a 14 playoff Alabama, if you had a 14 playoff Michigan, if you had a 14 playoff Oregon, Georgia, you wouldn't even be in the playoff. You wouldn't even have a shot at the national championships. What would you rather? Would you rather have a shot and lose in the semifinals, lose in the quarterfinals, or would you rather not have a shot at all and go play in the Outback Bowl? That's your alternative. So stop complaining. Look at these matchups, Tennessee and Oregon. Who wouldn't love to see those offenses there? One of the best offenses in the country in Tennessee, a surging offense in Oregon with Bo Nix, an underrated defense led by Dan Lanning. How could he and this Oregon defense attempt to shut down Hendon Hooker? Could they do it at all? Yeah, sure, Georgia would probably blow out Tulane. Keep in mind, these first-round matchups would all be on campus, so Alabama would host LSU in Tuscaloosa. Again, that would actually clarify some things too. What if we had a playoff like this and Alabama lost to LSU in Death Valley, but then some things worked out, they still both made the playoff, and now the game's in Tuscaloosa. All right, LSU, you won on your turf, come beat us on ours. It's a rematch, but it's like almost like a home and home. How awesome is that? All right, Michigan and Ole Miss, let's play. Ole Miss, you're severely overrated. You can prove me wrong if you beat Michigan. I don't think they could for that matter, not in Ann Arbor. So Michigan moves on to play Clemson. Clemson's like, hey, we're ready to play Michigan. People are, right there. How about that? Clemson and Michigan, that's been the debate of the playoffs since they came out yesterday, was the fact that Clemson was 4th and Michigan was 5th. Many people believing that Michigan should have been 4th and Clemson 5th. Let this game decide it right here. Put them head to head. Now it's decided. The winner clearly was the better team, and we believe it would be Michigan. Then you would have Ohio State and Michigan possibly in the semifinal for a shot at the national championship. Talk about stakes being high. I mean, yeah, we have seen games in the past between Ohio State and Michigan where it's like 2 11-0 teams, right? The winner goes to the Big Ten championship. There's so much on the line. Winner has national title, all these different things. But imagine the stakes now. In the past, it was still huge because you assume that the winner of the game was going to move on to the national championship or the playoff or whatever. But imagine looking at this now and just saying the winner actually does go to the national championship. Neutral site. It's not in Ann Arbor. It's not in Columbus. Neutral site. Ohio State, Michigan. Winner plays for the national championship. Tennessee and Georgia. Game of the year coming up this Saturday. Whoever wins it, congrats to them. Maybe they get a shot at rematch. It's just like in Georgia and Alabama, guys. I mean, even last year, Alabama beat Georgia in the SEC championship. Okay, that was great. They got Alabama to the playoff. They got another crack at it. Georgia did. They got another shot at Alabama in the game that mattered the most, the national championship, and they made the most of it. They won it. So, again, I don't think a first-round bye is unfair. I don't think this is a bad system. And I'm going to tell you guys one thing. We're going to come back to this every single week after the playoff rankings on Wacky Wednesday. So another reason to show up on Wacky Wednesdays, not only to see what upsets we might be picking or discussing, but what would a 12-team playoff look like based on the playoff committee's rankings that would have been released the day before or whenever. Another great reason for you to come right here to the Gridiron Expert, to subscribe to our channel, to hit that notification button so you didn't miss out on live streams like this where we're breaking down what a 12-team playoff would look like, how fun it would be, taking your calls, taking your questions. That's why you need us. That's why you need to be here. Now, you don't need us. We're not saying that, but we want you. We want you here. We want you to be a part of our nation. We want you to be a part of our team. And this is the kind of stuff you're going to get, on top of all the other videos that we're cranking out during the week as well. Georgia, Tennessee earlier today, Alabama, LSU tomorrow, Wake Forest, NC State on Friday. recaps on Sundays, rankings on Sundays, and boom, 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 boom. It's just nonstop college football content that is driven by you, the GE Nation. So with that, guys, let us take a couple of more questions and comments here in the chat. And we'll just kind of roll with it. Again, we said it was going to be a little bit of a shorter stream. We were looking at about an hour, so we got another about 15, 20 minutes or so before we have to, unfortunately, start to wrap things up. You know how it goes, other obligations. Got a luau to go to. Clearly, gotta go get some Mai Tais, and I think someone said they're gonna have a grass skirt for me, so we'll see how that goes, and play that Bay here. So I'm glad a lot of you guys agree, though. I agree. Jerry saying this bracket would be awesome. Steven saying that he loves the bracket. He loves the 12-team playoffs. I think a lot of us really would. I think it would be a lot more fun. Nate says, upsets are way more likely to happen in basketball due to the nature of the sport. Expanding the playoff just ensures that the biggest names, Bama and Ohio State, will never miss it. Sure. Possibly. That's one way to put it. But my argument to this, and Nate says, Oregon-Tennessee would be an awesome bowl game outside of the college football playoff had ESPN not ruined them. Fair. But Nate, I'll give you this argument. Yes, you're probably right. Eventually teams like Ohio State and Alabama, they're going to have a fall off eventually, or a down year where they miss out. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. Ohio State missed it last year. Alabama lost the Natty last year. One more loss for Alabama, and they're out. So they're bound to miss. Now, yes, with the 12-team playoffs, it's going to be very rare that they miss. You could lose you lose 2 games, and you still have a shot at making the playoff. But as you can see, I'm going to go to our rankings real quick. Based on the playoffs committee's rankings, guys, look at who's in it. I mean, your top 11 teams all make it, which is great. But then a team like UCLA doesn't. Kansas State doesn't. Utah does not. Illinois, a one-loss team, does not. North Carolina does not. Tulane gets in only because they're the highest-ranked Group of 5 conference champion based on the ranking. There's a lot of deserving teams that miss out. Another argument I'll throw at you, Nate, is yes, while your elite teams, Alabama, Ohio State, whatever, they are almost ensuring that they don't get in, they lose in the regular season, and look who they might have to play. In this scenario, Ohio State would have to play Alabama. So in the past, you might see Ohio State and Alabama in the Final Four, and you'd think that's going to be our national championship. They're on opposite sides of the bracket. Boom, that's inevitable. That's what we got. It ensures that, yes, they're both going to make it, but there's no guarantee they're both going to be in it by the Final Four by the end. Based on what happens in the regular season, they might play each other in the semifinals. They might play each other in the quarterfinals. You never know. They could play each other in the opening round. So then an elite team like Ohio State or Alabama is put out relatively early. And the playoff game actually means something. And then we might actually have some quality playoff games. I can tell you one thing, guys. It's really, really frustrating. I'm sure it is for you too, where ESPN and all these, and we're guilty of it too because you kind of have to do it. We're hyping up the playoff. We're hyping up the semifinal matchups. And everybody knows who's going to win. I mean, look back to the history of the college football playoff. How many games have you truly watched and looked at and said, this is going to be a good game? Like, I really don't know who's going to win this game. We've had a couple of thrillers, right? The Georgia-Oklahoma back at the Rose Bowl was phenomenal. And that one was a game that could have gone either way in terms of, when you're looking at it before the game happens, like who's going to win. That Clemson-Ohio State game from a few years ago, controversial finish, sure, with the fumble recovery, and the scoop and score that was not ruled incomplete, but great game, great close playoff game. But what other playoff games, semifinal games, have we truly had where you looked at it and you go, I don't know, man, this is going to be tough. This is going to be fun to watch. Because let's be honest, last year, we all knew Alabama wasn't going to lose Cincinnati. It wasn't going to happen. We all knew Georgia was going to beat Michigan. We knew Michigan didn't stand a chance in that game. Didn't have it. So you knew going into the playoff on New Year's Eve, I already know who's going to win. And yeah, crazy things happen here and there too. I mean, you got to play the game, sure, but those games were both blowouts. Those games weren't worth watching in the second half unless you were a fan of the teams that were winning. Go back even further. Alabama, Michigan State. Horrible game. No one wanted to watch it. Clemson, Oklahoma. Horrible game. No one wanted to watch it. LSU, Oklahoma. No one wanted to watch it. A couple of years ago when Clemson shut out or murdered, annihilated Ohio State. Not the close game. I don't even know. I can't remember all the years. Alabama, Washington. No one wanted to watch it. Who cared? Not going to be close. Boring. Florida State, Oregon. So I'm like, that's going to be a great game. Oregon blew them out. You know, we had Alabama, Ohio State that first year of the playoff. That was a thriller and an upset. Ohio, and the playoff committee flexed their muscles on that one. They were like, "Look, we put Ohio State in there. Look what they did." And then the playoff was like, "Yes, you know, we have our top 4 teams, and look, the first year we do this, the number 4 team beats the number 1 team. Look at that, we're brilliant, we're geniuses." And I think they got like super high egos, and then just tanked after that because they've been garbage since. And many people still believe that TCU should have gotten in that year over Ohio State, even though the Buckeyes still won the national championship. Bottom line is, guys, these playoff games with an expanded playoff are going to mean something, and they're going to be more enjoyable and fun for the fans and for everybody involved. It is very boring to know going into New Year's Eve that the 2 most important games of the year have already practically been decided. Because again, you're lying to yourself if you thought that Cincinnati was going to beat Alabama. You're lying to yourself if you thought Michigan was going to beat Georgia. You're lying to yourself if really you thought either of those games were going to be close. And if you were going to have to pick one, you probably would have leaned Georgia and Michigan, thinking that game would be a little bit closer, and it wasn't. Neither of those 2 teams, Cincinnati and Michigan, stood a chance. And traditionally, that's what we're seeing in these semifinal games. The games are boring. They're blowouts. Who cares? I mean, what's the point? You know, Alabama, Oklahoma, another blowout game. Now, Oklahoma kind of made a game of it, but Bama jumped down to a 21, 28-0 lead. It was over at that point. Who cared? You know, I mean, it's for a lot of these playoff games, guys, it just simply doesn't matter. And that's why an expanded playoff is going to be really good and more beneficial for us as fans. I genuinely believe that. And so many people are going to say, "Oh, yes, the elites are never going to miss." True. You're right. But the elites are not guaranteed a Final Four spot because they're going to have a much tougher game in the quarterfinals. Much tougher game. And again, just like the NCAA tournament, you survive that one. Like, look at this again. You survive that one. Well, guess what? Now you're in the Final Four. Congrats. Now you've got an even tougher test. But in theory, unless you have a Cinderella run, you know? Ohio State plays Bama. Now Ohio State's playing Michigan again. The rivalry. I bet you that no players get assaulted in that game. As intense of a rivalry as it is between the Buckeyes and the Wolverines, I bet you that no player gets held down and beaten upside the head with a helmet. Bet you that doesn't happen. A little shot at Michigan State there. All right, let me take a couple more looks at the chat here. What we got? SBO Kendall says Lane Kiffin's going to Auburn. Christopher Simmons says he heard Deion Sanders and Lane Kiffin are the top choices at Auburn, but he thinks they're happy where they're at. I'm going to address on that in a second. I just want to address a few more things here. Yeah, I'm not saying Alabama wouldn't get upset. Doggy, I'm not. That's what I'm saying. That was literally my whole argument, was that anything could happen. You know, and how do you know? Or if you're referring to what I said about Cincinnati, I think we all knew. Neutral site. Alabama had more size, had more speed. Cincinnati held their own. It was not as ugly as we thought it would be. 24-6, right? It wasn't horrible. 31-6, 24-6. I mean, it wasn't a terrible game. But again, you have to play the games. You know, you can't just be like, "Oh, Alabama's going to win. You're on to the national championship." So you have to play the games, and things can happen. We've seen crazy upsets happen. App State multiple times. App State over Michigan. App State over A&M. Most people thought Michigan would win. Most people thought A&M would win, and look what App State did. So you have to play the games. They could be a lot closer than you think. They could result in upsets, just like the NCAA tournament. UMBC, upset in Virginia. Number 1 seed, first one ever to go down. We just assume Virginia's going to win, but you got to play the game. So I'm not saying that, but most of the time when you look at these teams, you go, it's not going to be that fun of a game. Based on what we've watched throughout the year, based on who they're playing. I mean, like last year, Georgia's defense was so good. Did we really think that Michigan was going to be able to score that much on them? No, we really didn't. You know, well, Michigan's defense is pretty good, sure, but Georgia's is better. You know, crazy things can happen, yes, but most of the times you look at these playoff games and you already have a pretty good idea of who's going to win. The favorite doesn't always win by any means, but you have a pretty good idea of who's going to win and how the game's going to go. Expanding the playoffs is going to help us with that. All right. Anthony James, good to see you, man, all the way out in Pac-12 country. Nice to have you here, man. New Year's Six bowl games would be great for expanded playoff and would give more life to a lot of these bowl games. Yeah. If you're referring to if you're referring to the New Year's Six Bowls, I'm confused, Anthony, or fill me in. Are you saying that the New Year's Six Bowls would hold more weight in the playoff? Which I think is what you're trying to say, because that's exactly how this is going to happen, actually. And I know you know that. So, like, the quarterfinal matchups and the semifinal matchups would all be New Year's Six Bowl games. So, for example, Tennessee-Oregon could be the Peach Bowl. TCU-Georgia could be the Cotton Bowl. Those 6 games, those 4 quarterfinal games and the 2 semifinal games would be the New Year's Six Bowl games. And he's right. Anthony's exactly right. It would be great because those games would mean something. Because now, the playoff takes 2 of the New Year's Six Bowl games and calls them their own. So it'd be like the college football playoff semifinal at the Rose Bowl. So the winner of that semifinal game wins the Rose Bowl. Which is great. But now, as we all know, we're seeing so many players opt out of these bowl games. And Anthony, so you're exactly right. Making them a playoff game, making them mean something, which I believe all games mean something. Genuinely, I do. I believe all bowl games definitely mean something. Players aren't going to opt out of a game that could help them get closer to a national championship. If Michigan State and Pittsburgh were playing in an expanded college football playoff last year at the Peach Bowl, do you think Kenneth Walker opts out? Do you think Kenny Pickett opts out? No. They're playing in that game. So it would add some extra, importance and effort, mentality for these teams and these players heading into those games. So excellent point, Anthony, 100% on that. I do agree with that. And it's still a bowl win. So even if you lose in the quarterfinal, or if you win the quarterfinals and lose the semifinals, like, dang, we didn't win a national championship, we didn't get there, but we still won the Rose Bowl. That still counts for something. And it counts for some of these programs that don't get that opportunity very often. So, yeah, excellent point. SBO Kennels. Oregon will lose to the worst team in the Pac-12 this Saturday, and UCLA goes down, eliminates the Pac-12 out of the playoff. Let me tell you what, if Colorado somehow finds a way to take down Oregon, that would be, I honestly would love it. I don't have anything against Oregon either. Who loves chaos, right? Because you're right, if that's the case, Oregon's out. UCLA goes down to anybody, whether it's Arizona State or anybody else, they're out. And then USC would have a shot, but if USC were to lose to UCLA later on, then they'd be out. So the Pac-12 consistently for years has kind of shot themselves in the foot when it comes to their playoff hopes. They've beat themselves up. Like last year, Oregon was still in the hunt, and Utah ruined it for them. So we've seen teams in the Pac-12 kind of shoot themselves in their own foot. They've shot their conference in the foot in terms of trying to get a team in. I don't think Oregon's losing to Colorado, and I actually don't think UCLA loses to Arizona State. But USC and UCLA, that's going to be a college football playoff elimination game. That's going to be an elimination game, and meaning that if Oregon keeps winning and the winner of USC and UCLA keeps winning, that could be your Pac-12 championship, and that could be a playoff playing game as well. So I would love to see a top 10 Pac-12 championship. The last few years, the Pac-12 championship hasn't meant too much. It's really just been more of a, the winner goes to the Rose Bowl. Congrats, which is great. Still an honor. Huge for Utah, huge for Washington a few years ago, but guys like that. But to have it as a play-in game, that'd be amazing. So yes, 100% agree there. Chan Man, good to see you, man. Thoughts on Alabama LSU? We are going to have our full prediction out on that tomorrow. So I don't want to spoil too much yet. I think it's going to be a very fun game. I think it's going to be, that was actually one of our games that we had on Upset Alert tonight, that LSU, despite being a double-digit underdog, could win the game outright. 100% they could. But we're going to have our official prediction and analysis, deep analysis on that game coming out tomorrow right here on the channel, 1 p.m. Central Time. So, maybe you could maybe you can get one of your teachers to play it in class. I know they're not a big Alabama fan, but maybe you can get up there, get a little more GE exposure, you know what I'm saying? Or maybe you can watch it, during class or something. I don't know. But it'll be at 1 p.m. tomorrow. Make sure to give it a look. Good to see you, Chan, man. Glad to hear. All right. Last few questions, guys, before we wrap things up. Let me see here. Great question from Doggy. I think I like that. That's a great way to close it. What would I say is the upset of the year so far? Wow. Great question. And John says, my upset of the year is Kansas State running Oklahoma State. So many OSUs. Running Oklahoma State out of the stadium. I wouldn't call that an upset, though. Most shocking result, possibly, right? Like, Well, yeah, someone will say, well, isn't an upset shocking? Yeah, typically it is. But, like, no one saw Kansas State winning that game that bad. Winning it was one thing. To win it 48-0 is insane. But Kansas State was favored in that game slightly. So by a point spread standard, not an upset. I would say upset of the year. God, that's tough, man. That's tough. That's not a lot. At the time, I would go with Appalachian State over Texas A&M. Obviously, A&M is nowhere near what we thought they were going to be, even though we only had them at 8-4 anyways. 8-4, 9-3, nowhere near as good as people thought. But that was such a huge win over a top 10 team in College Station. That was a huge deal. Also, at the time, Tulane going into Manhattan and beating Kansas State. I think that one still holds a little bit. Too, because Tulane's been playing great ball. They're a good team, but so is Kansas State. And so if you're a Kansas State fan, you have to be asking yourself, dang, where would we be in the rankings right now had we beat Tulane? If Kansas State had defeated Tulane, they'd be in the top 10 right now. Their only loss would have been to TCU, and that was the game they were winning 28-10. So, man, if we beat Tulane, Kansas State's probably sitting around 8th, 9th in the country, maybe higher, and really is in playoff discussion and could set up a play-in game in that Big 12 championship between TCU and Kansas State if they both keep winning. So that's a good one. Marshall over Notre Dame, that was definitely a good one, Doggy. I agree with that. Notre Dame, again, kind of like A&M, not the team we thought they were going to be, but with the game being in South Bend, with Marshall not being very good at all. Isn't it funny, too, how a lot of these Group of 5 programs or even FCS programs that beat an elite Power 5 team, everybody goes, man, they're the team to beat in the Sun Belt, they're the team to beat in the Mountain West, whatever, and then like the next week they lose, right? They can't sustain that success. And it happens every year. We see this team like Toledo a few years ago when they beat Arkansas. They jumped in there and I think they started like 6-7-0. Toledo was looking great, and they failed like a really bad team in the MAC. And it's like, how? You beat Arkansas. You beat this guy. You beat Louisiana Monroe did the same thing back in 2012. They beat Auburn. That was a really bad year for Auburn. I think they beat Auburn or came close to it. They beat Arkansas, who was number 8 at the time. Fell out in the Sun Belt later on. Still made a bowl game, but ended up finishing like 8-4 or something. So it's really funny to me how those teams can get those elite wins on any given Saturday, but then the any given Saturday thing applies to them the very next week or a couple weeks later when they lose to a team that's inferior to them. And you're like, how? How do you beat, like Marshall, how do you beat Notre Dame but lose to Louisiana? How do you beat Notre Dame but lose to Old Dominion or whoever the heck Marshall has lost to? They've lost a couple games already. It's crazy. It's crazy how it works. Great question, though. I love that. Anthony says, there seems to be a factor with polls. They started high in the polls, so they stay relatively high despite losing to those teams ranked lower than them. Example, USC and Utah. Bingo. And it's not even that, Anthony. That is a partial reason. It's also name brand. And I mean, honestly, with that, it's all about the bottom line with the AP poll and the College Football Playoff Committee. What their rankings come down to is like 10 to 15%, if that, based on the results on the field. A lot of the other percent, the rest of it, 85, 90%, based on name recognition, who their coach is, who their star players are, what the rankings would do for the TV ratings, what kind of controversy and discussion would it create. That's what it is. Because is LSU a top 10 team? No. Is Ole Miss a top 11 team? No. But they like Lane Kiffin, and they love the idea of seeing a top 10 showdown in Death Valley. Just eats it alive. College Game Day is going to eat it up. The ads are going to eat it up. The people that don't know much about football are going to eat it up. Oh, number 6, number 10, top 10. That's going to be great. That's why I do it. USC is a good team. I don't think they're that high, though. I don't think they're that high. Should be that high. They're 9th in the rankings. I've got them at 13th. They have yet to crack my top 10. Why? They have no defense. Only beat Arizona by 8. Barely survived Oregon State, who I also don't think should be in the top 25 right now anyways. But barely beat Oregon State. And I'm not trying to be down on your team, Anthony, by any means. I'm really not. But I look at USC. They barely got by Arizona. They probably should not have beaten Stanford. Stanford shot themselves in the foot, 4 turnovers. USC only won that game by 13. Despite the 4 turnovers, that actually helped them win. If they don't do that, Stanford probably beats them. Oregon State should probably beat them. Arizona easily could have beat them if Arizona had a lick of defense. So it's name brand. They love Lincoln Riley. They love the electric offense. They love USC because when USC is good, it's good for football. So let's keep them high. USC is still a good team. They deserve to be in the top 15. Like you said, 12 to 15, perfect range. I've got them at 13, so I'm glad we're on the same page. But top 10 caliber? No. And here's the thing. USC, if they win out, if they beat UCLA and they win the Pac-12, maybe they get a rematch against Utah, maybe they get a game against Oregon, they win those games, great. They have proven me wrong, and they are worthy in my eyes of a top 4 spot. If they're a one-loss team with those type of wins, give it to them. I just don't think they're going to get it. Maybe they get past UCLA. That's great. Maybe they get past Notre Dame, who's not that great, but they could. Great. I don't think they win the Pac-12 championship if they face Oregon. Now, they face Utah in a rematch. So that could be close. They face Oregon, though. I like Oregon in that game. I really do. And I actually had that back in the preseason as well. But it's a matter of, we've ranked them high, so we need to keep them high. But it's also a matter of, this is a big team. This is a big name. Oh, look at who they're playing this upcoming week. Let's rank them high to either boost another team's resume or to make that game more attractive on TV. Like we were talking about last night. Isn't it funny how LSU is ranked 10th? They shouldn't be, but they're playing Alabama, top 10 matchup. If Alabama beats LSU, guess who Alabama plays next week? Ole Miss, who's number 11. And if Ole Miss, they don't play anybody. They have a bye week. So Ole Miss, barring any crazy movement behind them, will move into the top 10. And so for 2 weeks in a row, Alabama will face a top 10 team. Everybody can advertise it. Everybody can get excited about it. Ooh, Bama versus top 10. Could Bama lose? Could Bama? It's talking points. It's opportunities for people to advertise. It's attractive, and it boosts Bama's resume. Funny how that works, isn't it? Funny how that works. Let's see. Doggy, was A&M's win over Alabama last year a fluke? And Doggy said, so Marshall was a fluke then. Is A&M's win over Alabama last year a fluke? I mean, I think so. Look, upsets happen, and obviously when the upsets happen, I believe the teams deserve to win. Like, if we could sit here all day long and go, the reason that this team lost was because they committed 20 penalties and committed 5 turnovers. Okay, that happens. Like, I'm not going to take anything away from the team that beat them. So I'm not going to take anything away from Texas A&M. I'm not going to take anything away from Marshall because they did win those games. They won them fair and square, and they played their hearts out. They were motivated. When no one was giving those teams a chance, they were motivated. But the continued success isn't there. And I'm not saying when you pull off a massive upset, you got to win out. I'm not saying when you beat a team like Alabama or Notre Dame or whatever that you better win your conference or be a title contender. I'm not saying that. But I am saying I think it's funny how you can be a team like that and the very next week turn around and lose to a bad team. I think it is interesting any given Saturday. But clearly A&M was not very good last year anyways. 8-4, right? 8-4 U. Jerry Turner, name brand teams equals ratings in the mind of the committee. Big time. That's exactly what it is. Exactly what it is. Someone said Tennessee over Alabama doesn't happen 9 out of 10 times. Interesting. So play it 10 times, and he doesn't think that Tennessee wins it very often. Very interesting there. Oregon State is pretty good this year. They're 6-2. They got a good run game. Washington's going to shut down on Friday, in my opinion. Going bowling, though, for back-to-back years for Jonathan Smith, and obviously with a lot of football left to be played. Last year they won, 7 games, I think? 6 or 7 games. So an opportunity to match or do better than last year's win total for Oregon State, that's great. That's really, really good for them, and I am genuinely happy for them. I don't think they're all that great, but they clearly are hard for Jonathan Smith took over, so I do want to give him credit. Whoever it may be, glitched out there for a second. Whoever it may be, TCU will not make the college football playoff. And I think that was evident tonight or last night by the committee having them ranked 7th behind a one-loss Alabama. And keep in mind that there are some teams ahead of them that will continuously be a one-loss team as well. Michigan or Ohio State will more than likely be a one-loss team. Georgia or Tennessee will more than likely be a one-loss team by the time the season's end. So yes, TCU might have a conference championship to their name, but if they lose one game, I do not believe they get put in, despite many people rioting over that. So, and I know we talked about Kansas State possibly getting in. If they win out, they would have a chance. But Kansas State, for them to have that chance, really needs to hope that TCU is undefeated in that Big 12 championship game. So if you're Kansas State, you're hoping you're winning out, and you're hoping that TCU wins out until that title game, and then Kansas State beats them. And then you might have a slight argument to get the Wildcats into the 4, depending on where they're ranked heading into that championship game. But I do think the Big 12 misses out if TCU loses just once. One loss for TCU, Big 12's out, and it actually clears up a little bit more room. That's one conference out. If the Pac-12 beats themselves up, that's another conference out. So now it's down to a possible undefeated Clemson. Whatever happens between LSU, Alabama, Georgia, and Tennessee, and then obviously what happens in the Big Ten between Ohio State and Michigan. Slowly but surely, guys, over the course of this month, teams will begin to beat up on each other. Things will begin to resolve each other, and that's how we conclude it. That's how we come down to our Final Four. But this will be one of the first years in a while that I feel like going into Selection Sunday, we're actually going to have some legitimate debate. And of course, we'll have all that for you in the very beginning of December. Late that Saturday night, early Sunday morning, we'll be here talking about that, asking you who should be getting in, and letting the debate begin as we head into the postseason. Connor Hibbett, man, you caught us right at the end as we close. Good to see you, Connor. I'm glad you're here. Are the Boilermakers Purduing it? I love the saying there. Will they reach the Big Ten championship? They can certainly threaten the Illinois defense. We will have more on that game. Was it next week? Is that when they play? Next week? But yes, that will be one of the best offenses that Illinois has faced. Obviously, Aiden O'Connell, that passing attack is legit. It really is. Purdue cannot afford to overlook Iowa, although I do believe they're going to beat Iowa this Saturday. I don't think they should worry too much about it. Can't overlook it. Good defense. But actually, the Iowa game comes at a perfect time. Kind of gives Purdue a bit of a test, kind of snuff out the Iowa defense, prepares them for the Illinois defense. Two completely different teams, two completely different styles, but two very good defenses in Iowa and Illinois. Purdue gets past Iowa. They've got a great chance to get past Illinois. Obviously, they win that. They win the Big Ten West. We'll have our prediction analysis on that in a few days. But I know, Connor, you've been a big Purdue advocate ever since the preseason. I've loved it. I've loved that you kept getting used their saying. They're not a playoff contender. They're not even ranked. But, man, how awesome would it be to see them get in the Big Ten championship game and be able to use that type of offense against a team like Michigan or Ohio State. That would be fun. So right now, for the time being, Connor, they are Purduing it. We might have to have you on here in a few weeks when they actually play Illinois to get your breakdown and see if they can actually pull off that upset and pull off the Big Ten West title. So with that, guys, we will conclude our live stream here tonight. A little bit past, 8:15. God, time flows, doesn't it? I said, hey, at 7:45, only got about 10, 15 more minutes, and we talked for 30. What you get when you got some great people in the chat with you guys tonight. But I want to thank you all again for joining us here on a Wednesday night live stream here at the Gridiron Expert. Again, we're here every Tuesday and every Wednesday, unless we say otherwise, here at 7 p.m. Central Time, ready to talk college football, ready to take your questions, ready to take your comments, and we cannot thank you all enough for your continued support, your continued views. Make sure to hit that like button here, and just make sure to go check out the videos as we come out throughout the rest of this week. Georgia, Tennessee came out today, Alabama, LSU tomorrow. Wake Forest, NC State, another top 25 matchup on Friday, college football Saturday, and then we're right back here with videos on Sunday. So a lot of stuff coming your way over these next few days. But appreciate every single one of you. Jerry Turner, Paxton, Connor, Hibbett, Cape, Doggy, the American voice, disregarded. I like it. Anthony James, my man, I appreciate you. Doggy, Robert Sharpton, Travis Daisy, Cyclone Mitch. Real quick, to answer your question, will there be an automatic bid for a group of 5 in the expanded playoffs? Yes, there will be. There definitely will be. They actually already addressed that, so that'll be exciting. John Sarian, Robert Sharpton, Stephen Cuffey, SBO Kennels, Eddie Rose, Slangin' and Bangin', Michael Brennan, Go Pelty, and everybody other. Jerry Turner, if I didn't already say your name. All of you guys, we appreciate you. Thank you all so much for your support. Thank you for being here tonight, and we will see you. I am not a Texas Tech fan, Paxton. Thank you very much. Far from it, actually. Don't hate them, but I have no dog in the fight there. Not a Texas Tech fan. Watch your mouth. But I appreciate you guys. Have a great rest of your night. Get over the hump, and let's get to this next college football Saturday, which is by far one of the biggest and most exciting of the entire year. Have a great night, everyone.